Well, there's been a lot of conversation in the recent past about IPOs and the valuations of the companies that are hitting Dalal Street. Are they leaving enough money on the table for the retail investor that dives headfirst into these IPOs? And are they making money for investors? I got to talking to somebody in the newsroom, and we decided to contemplate the idea of somebody investing only in IPOs or recently listed companies, and then we realized, wait a minute, there is actually a scheme out there that does just that. So why don't we look at how this scheme has performed? And that scheme is the Edelweiss recently listed IPO fund. We'll talk about how this scheme is constructed, what companies the scheme has invested in, and what proportion they have invested in, and how they have performed over the last 1 year to 5 years. To talk about this concept, I'm joined in studio by Viral Bhatt, who's the founder of Money Mantra. Namaskar, Viral Bhai.
Namaskar. Thank you. Thank you for having me today, Alex.
My pleasure. So, I'm sure that a lot of people that come to you for advice will be coming and saying, "Bhai, IPO market में क्या हो रहा है?" Do you have an opinion on that?
वैसे देखने जाए तो it's always if you see as far as the IPO market is always a booming word in our markets. कल देखेंगे तो कोई एक कंपनी आके बोलेगी कि मैं IPO लेके आ रहा हूँ, एंड और एनी अदर डे आप देखोगे तो देर आर मैनी कंपनीज, एंड स्पेशली इन 2025 ऑलमोस्ट 1.4 बिलियन मार्केट कैप के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से अगर देखें तो IPOs आए, एंड इट इज़ ऑलवेज बूमिंग थिंग. सी बट द ओनली थिंग इज कंसर्न अराउंड द IPOs इज दैट कि मार्केट कैप तो है, बड़ा दिख रहा है, इतना पैसा कलेक्ट कर रहा है, बट सही में सही है कि नहीं?
Are the valuations justified?
Absolutely, justifying it.
है ना? Is it going to give you a return over a longer period of time? So let's look at this scheme. It's actually not a new scheme. It was launched quite a while back, right? It got prominence over the course of the last year and a half, when there was that big spurt in IPOs. बहुत सारी companies आके IPOs कर रहे थे. How has the performance been over the last 1 year?
As far as the IPO is concerned?
No, as far as this Edelweiss
fund is concerned. Yeah. So let's look at it otherwise, that if you compare with the markets, returns are, last 1 year is not great. And if you say that market is around 5 to 6%, Nifty 50, and Nifty 500 may be slightly better than Nifty 50. But if compared to the fund thing, fund is not performed well. It's just you can say around 1% kind of a return in this particular year. But if you see 3 to 5 years time horizon, it performed well, almost 15 to 19%. As far as overall IPO returns collectively.
This is point-to-point returns.
Point-to-point returns. Yeah.
Point-to-point returns. So what are the recent trends that you've seen in the portfolio building of this scheme? Because there are so many companies that have come out with IPOs. What are the major additions and exits that they have done?
Definitely. So whenever we talked about IPOs, and recently the surge happened very well. 2022 and 23 इतना ज़्यादा नहीं IPOs आए थे, बट स्पेशली 24 and 25 में बहुत सारे सेक्टर्स ने पार्टिसिपेट किया. We talked about, always talked about the new age sectors, right? So in that, financial services, IT companies, green energy companies and all. So as far as looking at that particular thing, let me give you some data point. उन्होंने अपना पोर्टफोलियो कैसे स्ट्रक्चर किया था. So as far as entry is concerned, definitely सबसे बड़ा IPO अभी गया LG इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स, वहाँ पे उन्होंने एंट्री लिया. टाटा कैपिटल में उन्होंने एंट्री लिया. एसेट मैनेजमेंट कंपनी कैनरा रोबेको में एंट्री लिया. फिर वी वर्क करके कंपनी जो को वर्किंग स्पेस है वहाँ पे एंट्री लिया, राइट. सो ऐसे कंपनीज जो न्यू एज सेक्टर को बिलोंग करते हैं, वहाँ पे उन्होंने काफ़ी अट्रैक्शंस दिखाया और एंट्री लिया. एंड सिमिलरली बजाज हाउसिंग फाइनेंस से एग्जिट लिया, फिर ज्योति CNC ऑटोमेशन से एग्जिट लिया, वारी इंजीनियर से उन्होंने एग्जिट लिया. तो ये सारे एग्जिट्स हुए और सामने एंट्रीज भी हुए. बट यहाँ पे द मेन पॉइंट टू डिस्कस अबाउट एज फार एज दिस IPO स्कीम इज कंसर्न, दैट कि जो हम हमेशा कहते हैं एज फार एज इन्वेस्टर्स इज कंसर्न, रिटर्न्स आर कंसर्न, दैट IPO में इतना बूम आता है, लोग बात करते हैं इन्वेस्ट करना चाहिए, शॉर्ट टर्म गेन के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से, लिस्टिंग गेन के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से हमेशा चेस करते हैं, बट और ये स्कीम भी रिफ्लेक्ट कर रहा है, राइट? शॉर्टर ड्यूरेशन अगर आप देखोगे तो इट्स मार्केट को भी बीट नहीं किया है, बट लॉन्गर रन में उसने मार्केट को काफी अच्छे से बीट किया हुआ है. सो इफ यू होल्ड दिस काइंड ऑफ अ फंड फॉर अ 3 years time horizon or 5 years time horizon, then definitely you will get benefit out of it.
So, but have you studied their philosophy? Their philosophy is to invest in IPOs and recently listed companies, right? But what is the kind of churn that they have? Do they change their portfolio construction very often, or do they hold for longer periods of time?
I think whatever I came to know about that particular fund is they hold for a good time, at least for a minimum 2 to 3 years time horizon. They always keep. They don't believe in the listing gain, and they don't churn their portfolio very frequently. So that's why you can. So if you ask me about the initial phase of that fund, then initial phase is very bad for that particular fund. Almost for a 1.5 year, इतना returns नहीं आया था that particular fund. But once they show the faith on those stocks जहाँ पे उन्होंने entry ली थी, after 2 to 3 years time अच्छा खासा returns accumulate हुआ that particular fund. So their turnover ratio is not that much very frequently. They hold their stocks at least for a 2 to 3 years time, and some of the good stocks they still holding from a long, right? So ultimately it's if someone is looking for that IPO kind of a thing and all, and we always suggest that don't look at IPO just for a listing gain purpose, not for a 6 months or for a 1 year. At least you should hold for a 3 to 5 years. And as far as compared to the IPO also, Alex, let's say you do the basket of 10 stocks of IPO and the range of 10 years, and similarly hypothetically let's say this particular year have already passed the 10 years time, you always see that good returns on the fund side rather than the IPO side, because many IPOs have given less than 5%, 6% or negative returns also,
compounded over a period of time, right? So therefore when somebody is contemplating getting into a scheme like this, the idea is to hold first of all for the long term, like any other equity scheme. But the point is, this is ultimately a sectoral or thematic scheme. It falls under that category. It's a investor favorite. Everybody is running after this, right? Because they want quick gains in a short period of time. But the potential for losses in this segment is also quite considerable.
True.
What is the advice that you give to people when they're looking at sectoral thematic? Personally, when you speak to people who are coming to you for advice, do you advise them to go into it?
Absolutely. I always say that, so there is 2 type of portfolio always one should maintain, right? One is core portfolio and another is satellite portfolio. I will always say that you go for such kind of a funds if you are building your satellite portfolio.
And how much of your portfolio should
at least 5 to 10% for sure you can go with this kind of a fund.
Okay.
And in that also, I will not suggest any standalone sectorial fund.
Sure.
Not pharma, not banking, financial, not consumer.
So more like financial services or healthcare or
combination of the funds.
Or manufacturing.
If I can name it a particular fund,
of course.
I will always suggest one fund having the ICICI Thematic Advantage FOF fund.
Okay.
It's a combination of all the sectors.
Sure.
Fund manager knows the best thing, that when to exit that any particular sector, right? And which sector we should include in our portfolio. So such kind of a fund, it will be very good for any particular investor who try to build the satellite portfolio with the exposure of 5 to 10%.
Absolutely. All right. So I think it's been an interesting conversation. Thanks so much, Viral, for joining me in studio. And I think for you, the takeaway really is that if you are investing in IPOs, invest for the long term. Viral said that, and I think a lot of other erudite and experienced investors will give you the same advice, is that these are companies that will prove their track record over the long term. So don't just go for that listing pop. And if you're investing in this scheme, this particular scheme, look at building it into your satellite portfolio, which has a certain amount of higher risk, but also potential for much higher return. Let us know what you think, and do stay tuned. Lots more coming up on NDTV Profit.